impressive, old man. You're using Bonetti's defense.
Naturally.
But it won't work forever.
For you see, I am not left-handed. Welcome, my friends, to Power Rangers SPD. The season begins with, beginnings. Not a great title, considering in the past we've had Day of the Dumpster, Quasar Quest, Force from the Future, and Prelude to a Storm, but hey, a name isn't everything. I bring it up only because it's just so generic. You might as well have called it First Episode of Season. We start with a pretty epic way to set up our villains. They blow up a planet after declaring it useless to them. And there's your nightmare fuel, kids. We cut to Earth, where we're told it's the not-too-distant future. Cue MST3K clip joke I already used in Lost Galaxy.
Earth has become a haven for all alien races who come from the farthest reaches of the galaxy to live in peace. 99% of the newcomers live in harmony.
And the rest are hunted by Gary Graham and Eric Pierpoint in Alien Nation. No, the rest of the alien criminals are hunted by Space Patrol Delta, and we're introduced to Sky, Bridge, and Sid in New Tech City.
Perp at 2 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock, Sid.
Got it.
Ah, professionals at work. The police of the future have some spiffy abilities and martial arts training, but it turns out the three we see here are cadets being taught by this woman, Cat Manx, who is an alien cat girl. Kind of on the nose with the name, isn't it? Bridge stutters for a bit and gives us some exposition about how they're B Squad cadets and that the A Squad are Power Rangers, and they're wondering at what point they actually get to become Rangers.
He wants to know when we're getting those great designer-colored suits.
Cat, I've told them. It's not about the suits or the weapons. It's about helping people and upholding the tradition of being a Power Ranger.
That's up to Commander Kruger. Not me. Dismissed.
I elbow the person to my right and salute. The monster, who was actually a guy in a hologram suit, says that the three are their best cadets, despite one not knowing what a clock looks like, and is named Boom. We cut to SPD headquarters and are introduced to the current head of the Space Police, Anubis Doggy Kruger. I've gotta say, I like the SPD headquarters. Appearance-wise, it looks a lot like the Bridge of Terra Venture, though what I don't understand is why they couldn't spring for better lighting. But the point is that it actually feels like a command center, more than Tommy's Lab or Ninja Ops did. Doggy.
Hi, Doggy.
There, happy now? I made a room joke in this. Moving on. Doggy is informed of the destruction of the planet in the teaser and ominously says that he is coming. With the Rangers, we get some physical comedy with Boom, who's also testing out Cat's new arm-cast laser, which promptly blows something up. Sky brings the other two to see the commander, and it's here that we meet the A-Squad Rangers, which utilizes the helmets from Power Rangers in Space, and the black helmet recolored as green, while wearing football armor. When the A-Squad passes by our heroes, Sky says how he wants to be the Red Ranger someday, but Bridge, using his civilian powers of energy reading or whatever, says that there's something off about the five. The three are being given new responsibilities, and while at first they think that means they're being sent to fight alien threats, in fact they're being given the task of finding thieves in a marketplace. Conveniently, they instantly run into the thieves. One of the thieves, Z, displays the ability to create holograms of herself. The two thieves do a mighty impressive job kicking the asses of the 3 trained police officers, who are apparently powerless to put someone in a lock or hold or anything. Also, the other thief, named Jack, has the ability to walk through walls. Back at HQ, Sid and Bridge admit their failure and that they're not ready to be Rangers. But Sky stands firm in saying that he's ready. Doggy... Okay, that just sounds silly. I'm calling him Kruger. Kruger berates them since the 3 are bickering with each other and clearly aren't a team, which is why they aren't ready in his mind to be Rangers.
Let's see. That puts us right on schedule to be Rangers around... never.
When Sky brings up that the 2 had special abilities, Kruger says he knows and leads them away. We cut to the thieves, who are handing out the stolen food and items to a group of homeless humans and aliens. Jack gives up his own coat to a hunchbacked alien lady who came in too late for food. Though clearly the coat's not going to fit her. Though they are aliens, maybe she's planning on eating it. Z says that she's tired of playing Robin Hood and that life sucks being poor. No kidding. But Jack wants to keep trying.
Jack, do you really think some more food and some clothes are gonna make a difference? If we're gonna make a change, then we're gonna have to be a part of something bigger.
Yeah, well, when you find something bigger, let me know.
Sky gives his own character motivation to Kruger, saying that his own father was the Red Ranger and has been training to be just like him.
Cadet, if I was to appoint Sid as Red Ranger, would you follow her into battle?
Sir, she's a girl.
So was every other female ranger who fought for good, you sexist dickhead. The villain, meanwhile, arrives at some sort of wormhole gate thing, and I'm sorry, but I'm having a really hard time understanding what the hell he's saying. It's like he's halfway between growling and mumbling his lines.
Syrian space web. And the Doggy Kruger is still alive.
He sends someone to Earth to retrieve something from a contact he has. Meanwhile, Z and Jack are loading up clothes onto a truck, and an alien comes up to them and hands them a large device, saying not to let them have it, and that the future of the universe depends on it. We then see the alien get chased away, and he's destroyed off screen. Kruger leads the 3 away and says that despite the 3 not being ready, they're being elevated to active status due to an oncoming threat.
SPD morphers. They are, without a doubt, your best friend. They are also judgment scanners. They will assess the guilt or innocence of those you take into custody. Boom. Guilty or innocent of eating the last slice of chocolate cake today?
Me? No, I didn't.
The scanner reads body temperature, pulse, and electrical impulses and renders a verdict. Guilty.
But,
And it does not make mistakes.
okay, I'm guilty. But it was just a piece of cake!
And they turn aliens into trading cards. Neat. The 3 are dispatched to find the thieves again, who in turn toss the device they were given into a garbage can. The 3 confront them again, but before they can be reduced to the containment devices, a monster, later referred to as a bluehead, appears and dispatches the foot soldiers of the season, called Crybots. Z and Jack make their escape while the Crybots fight the 3, though later Jack wants to go back.
They were really outnumbered back there.
They were trying to arrest us. Besides, it's not our fight.
The 3 decide it's time to morph.
Ready! SPD! Emergency! SPD Blue!
SPD Pink!
SPD Green!
Cue epic theme song fight.
Got it. Get them.
Z and Jack return, pulling off an impressive stunt by grabbing a crane cable and riding it over to kick the monster. They dispatch the Crybots and the bluehead runs off. Sky still wants to arrest the 2, but Kruger suddenly arrives and orders him to stand down. The 2 are placed in a cell, and Kruger explains the idea of SPD to them, that they train people to become Power Rangers and that the world is changing. He sees potential in the 2 and wants them to enlist.
You can serve your time in prison, or you can become part of something bigger. Something that makes a difference.
Can we think about this?
Of course. Time's up. Your decision.
Z agrees to join up, but Sky objects.
She's a criminal.
Duly noted.
Sir, we've been here for years, and you put her with us.
Cadet, you may be wise to remember that she was a worthy opponent despite your prior training and greater number. She is your new team member. I expect you to treat her as such.
Grum kills the Bluehead for failing and dispatches another one. Z goes to talk to Jack, trying to convince him to enlist, but she fails. Kruger identifies the robots to the others and says they're soldiers for the Trubian Empire. He also explains about how the Bluehead they fought is a more elite version of the Crybots, which explains why Grum can just crush one and order up another exactly like it. The group are sent to clean up after a battle that A-Squad was having, and Bridge detects the energy fields of several Crybots searching for something in the wreckage. Z explains about the device they tossed away earlier. One of the robotic patrol dogs frees Jack so it can help save Boom, who's accidentally been knocked out by an experiment. Jack explains that he turned down the proposition to become a ranger.
Excuse my bluntness, but what are you, whacked? I would give anything to be a Power Ranger. Me? I flunked out of the academy.
The group recovers the device, and Sky wants to bring it back to Kruger, but the others want to investigate on their own, Z even quoting regulations that they're allowed to take their own initiative. Not that this scene doesn't display some good writing, but on the other hand, wouldn't going back and using the HQ's resources make more sense than just stumbling around? Z consults one of her street contacts, Piggy, who tells them that it's a proton accelerator. The Bluehead arrives and the four morph and take him on. In the distraction of the fight, Piggy takes the accelerator. No one apparently decided to put Jack back in his cell since he wanders around while the Rangers call for backup. However, there's nobody that can be spared, and Jack overhears, realizing Z is in trouble. After some Crybots are brought in to distract the Rangers, Jack goes in and morphs into the Red Ranger. Jack defeats the monster, but then a mysterious figure flips a switch that changes the entire appearance of the thing and makes it grow. Okay, it's a giant robot that it's piloting, but you don't necessarily know that at first. They call in for the Zords, but Kruger tells them to stand down since A-Squad is dispatched to deal with it. The monster is destroyed, and we see that Piggy has delivered the proton accelerator to Grum, who flies his ship into the wormhole. Kruger says that the accelerator allows the Trubians to travel unimpeded through the galaxy, and that while they may become Great Rangers someday, they're not quite at their best yet. Beginnings, despite the cliched title, is an excellent start to the season. This is a very different start to a Power Rangers season, with a lot of elements that I really enjoyed. The Rangers are shown to be competent fighters, and the bickering felt very natural. The Rangers themselves have very strong characterization, and they set up a lot of story threads that can be looked at later, like resentment over Jack being chosen as the Red Ranger, which also raises the question of why he was chosen to be the Red Ranger if the Red Ranger is automatically the leader. Do they only have 5 color options? However, the downside is that there isn't much in the way of resolution for some parts. We don't really see the team come together and having to overcome their teamwork issues, or truly accept 2 thieves as full members of the squad. Hell, I don't even think Grum's name is even said in the episode. There's also a greater feeling of scope in this one. These people are the literal B squad, the backup guys, the ones who aren't the best of the best. They're good, no doubt, but they clean up after the A squad, and it's the A squad that destroys the giant monster. There's a larger world out there, and they're not the only ones fighting the war against evil. I'm not sure how I feel about the SPD costumes. The first time I saw the helmets, I thought the Rangers were evil because they reminded me of the Psycho Rangers' design. They've grown on me, but I just don't see why the visors have to be so huge. The uniforms are very efficient in design, going for just the color and a stylized black number to identify which part of the team they're on. It's just different is all. Not bad, just not what I would immediately think of for a Power Rangers uniform. Still, the efficient design works for a government organization. The theme song is awesome. It's energetic, it's a rock tune, it's got great melodies, and it's the kind of Power Rangers music you want to have when your heroes are doing something glorious. And oh yes, it is a Ron Wasserman piece.
Power Rangers, SPD, Power Rangers to the rescue. Power Rangers, SPD, Power
next episode, Grum launches an attack on a planet and Kruger dispatches A-Squad to deal with it while he briefs our heroes about the Emperor. With A-Squad out, the B-Squad is in charge of defending the Earth. However, that's exactly what Grum wants, instead sending the true bulk of his forces to Earth to conquer it. We also meet Mora, a 10-year-old girl in Grum's service, who questions why he's interested in conquering such a puny planet like Earth. He just says he has his reasons. Also on Grum's staff is Broodwing, a mercenary who supplies him with troops and equipment. Mora, in turn, has the ability to draw monsters in her book and cause them to come to life. In early episodes, it's hinted that she used to be very different than what she is now, and Grum frequently threatens to change her back. The Rangers head out in their Zords to deal with their first monster, who in turn is using a giant robot. The Zords are vehicles again this season, called Delta Runners, which once more makes sense for an organization created by a governmental body. They form the Delta Squad Megazord, which is surprisingly maneuverable despite being rather bulky. Of course, I do question the idea of the thing using buildings for cover, but hey, knowing this show, it's probably the abandoned warehouse district. They destroy the robot and imprison the monster. In the following episode, SPD headquarters receives a distress call from the A-Squad saying that it was a trap. It's very likely that the 5 have been destroyed. But enough about plot, let's talk about explosions for a second. Specifically, something that fandom has dubbed Kalish-splosions, though many have said it should be Koichi-splosions, since Koichi Sakamoto is the stunt and action director most likely responsible, though I'm going to stay with Kalish-splosions because he was the man with final say in the matter. This may seem like an odd thing to bring up, but it's relevant to how things are different in this era. The explosions are not handled well, and this trend started at the tail end of Dino Thunder. Power Rangers has always had explosions in it. However, there's a distinct difference in the way they're presented. Going by, say, Mighty Morphin, explosions have been quick. Sparks and blasts, usually small ones, happen all around the Rangers and they get knocked away, or they just manage to avoid getting hit by a blast. However, I started to notice that the explosions a few times in Dino Thunder, and much more times in SPD, were mostly behind the Rangers, and the directors decided that the explosion once isn't enough to convince us it's cool. Instead, they zoom in closer, slow down the same explosion, and have it happen again. The repeating slow zoom is irritating because it makes it seem like the audience's attention can't be focused on multiple elements. It needs to linger on it to get the full impact. Except that we don't need to see the full impact. It's an explosion. We get it. However, the real crime is the back explosions. Now, when they're on motorcycles or driving a vehicle, it makes sense that the explosions are behind them since they're just driving past them. Most of the time. Unfortunately, when this keeps happening, it makes the enemies look like they can't aim for crap. This is especially bad when they're not on vehicles. When an explosion occurs in front of the Rangers or a monster, it gives the illusion that it's much closer to them than it actually is. Those front explosions also tend to be pretty small explosions, but quick enough that you can believe that they were hit by the blast. However, Kalish explosions are huge, but happening behind the team, so either they should be vaporized by the sheer tonnage of it, or they're so far away that it shouldn't affect them. But again, the problem is when the explosions happen behind them, it looks like the enemy missed. But the Rangers leap into the air, flailing their arms, and then fall down anyway. It doesn't make the villain look strong. It makes the Rangers look like wusses because the wind is blowing them over. It gets especially ridiculous when sometimes the villain will have the back explosion, but all it's doing is sending them straight up into the air. It isn't badass, it's just stupid. The slow motion makes it seem like we're supposed to focus on how awesome this is, how impressive this is. But it isn't. It's just boring. Otherwise exciting fight scenes are ruined by this, especially since they keep on doing it. It'll happen multiple times in the same fight, and they're only saved because occasionally we do see a few front explosions and real impacts, but they're few and far between. Hell, with the amount of times they do the background explosions in a single fight, you might as well just film the entire damn thing in front of a green screen if you're not gonna bother making it look like the explosions are actually having a real impact on them. And on a show like Power Rangers, which is 75% fight scenes anyway, when you make the fights boring, it really makes the experience unbearable and you just want to skip through it. Now, why is this in any way significant to the actual series? Because it shows how the fighting quality has changed for the worse. In the original days, it was about martial arts techniques. All of the Rangers were skilled fighters, and the fighting was subsequently more impressive because it was being done through actual martial arts. However, as time went on, they started adding more wireworks into the fighting to compensate for the lack of abilities by the actors, who didn't have the training that the original actors did. That I didn't actually object to, since it was still fighting, and hey, they are superheroes after all. I can believe them doing like really high jumps and whatnot. But I'm putting my foot down here because the explosions, and subsequently a more extensive use of special effects, is a terrible thing to do. It's the equivalent of a movie compensating for its lack of story with special effects. Yeah, I like when the Rangers use their guns, but it's not because the gun effects are flashy, it's because guns are a more efficient way of defeating the enemy. In the end, though, the martial arts are a staple of the show, and I don't want to trade them in for big, repeated, slow-motion explosions in a rock quarry. But enough about that. Let's talk about some other stuff about the timeline of this series. A thing to note is that we get a picture of Sky's father, who's in the red Time Force uniform. This has led many to believe that Wes is Sky's father, which would actually gel a bit with how this show supposedly takes place in 2025. However, production-wise, it makes more sense that they just had the costume and decided to use it for this, much like how they reused the helmets of the Space Rangers. Sky's last name also isn't Collins, but that could mean anything. We'll get back to this in a minute. In the episode Abridged, the A Squad is officially listed as MIA, and Jack volunteers the squad to try to go looking for them, but Kruger refuses since they're needed on Earth. In the two-parter Sam, Bridge wonders if there's a larger plan at work, since the 5 of them just happened to all end up at SPD, and all happened to have superpowers. Wait, do they not even know why they have civilian powers? They just woke up one day and figured, hey, I can walk through walls. Neato. Weird. The episode itself is about a little kid with powers who is recruited by Mora because he has no friends. Z takes it upon herself to try to help him because of her backstory, but the real story here is revealed in the second part.
Having these gifts is not the only thing that you all have in common. The truth is, your parents all served at SPD before you were born.
Their parents were also the scientists who helped develop the morphers for SPD. This actually creates both a great continuity nod and a continuity flaw. See, as a fanwank theory, one could say that, especially with Sky's father wearing the red Time Force uniform, and because the SPD powers were developed in 2001, that SPD was actually a subsidiary of Biolabs, or at least affiliated with them. After all, Biolabs was attempting to duplicate the Quantum Morphers powers, and I could see them continuing the research even after Rancic was defeated. Now, the problem this creates is a matter of the time scale. See, in SPD, aliens are commonplace and are not considered anything that different to the people of Earth, which means they've been around for a while. Until this point, no actual year has been spoken on screen for when SPD takes place, but in a later episode it is revealed to be 2025. Let's give the show the benefit of the doubt here and say that aliens have been around for, let's say 10 years their time. Up until now, each Power Ranger season tends to take place in the same year that it's airing. Most people assume that several years have passed between In Space and Lost Galaxy, but the timescale of all the series coming after it means that can't be true, mostly because of the team-up episodes. I've read one theory that says that the wormhole from Miranoi could also be a time portal into the past, but that just seems a little far-fetched on top of everything else. So the problem here is that I guarantee that if Power Rangers continues to 2015, that we're not going to see aliens start becoming integrated with human society. The point is that sadly, I was hoping to say that since they never outright state what year SPD takes place in, it could be placed anywhere in Power Rangers and continuity would be fine. The 2001 tagline kind of screws that over. Time is weird in Power Rangers in that regard. Frankly, I think the only way to reconcile this stuff is the same way we need to reconcile stuff with the moon in Power Rangers. Namely, that physics and science work differently in Power Rangers. In this case, a year in Power Rangers isn't necessarily the same amount of time that it is in our world. After all, only so many seasons actually name the year they take place in, so it'd be easy to work around incongruities in technology and timeline, especially if a year is longer than it is here. Say, like, 700, 800 days as opposed to 365. Anyway, civilian powers. The powers came about because of an accident with the gene enhancers of the morphers, altering their DNA and passing it off to their children. Sam, in turn, is the last of the children who develop the powers, and they recruit him into the academy. There are a lot of nods in this series to previous seasons. Sometimes you can look in the background of episodes and see little things, whether they're intentional or not. For example, in this same episode, we can see an Equation helping to run drills. We get 3 nods in the episode Stakeout. The first 2 come in the form of a video game featuring the Blue Centaurian fighting a Cyclops monster from Lightspeed Rescue. Then, in the briefing of the episode, Kruger explains about a monster that has escaped from a prison satellite over KO-35. The main story continues in the 2-parter Shadow. The episode begins with a dream of Kruger fighting Grum and his forces. When he awakens, he looks over to a sword with a hilt shaped like a dog's head. Kat goes to him, asking if he had the dream again. After seeing his forces get defeated, Grum is more than a little upset, demanding a new plan from Mora to defeat them. She comes up with the oh-so-clever plan of defeat their leader. Yeah, the last time someone suggested that, it ended with the entire team switching out for 4 newbies. Kruger yells at the Rangers, something we haven't seen him do at any point previously, and the Rangers try to figure out why he's been so cranky all week. Kat goes to them and explains what's going on.
Years ago, the Trubian forces invaded Sirius. Commander Kruger, he lost everything. That's not an excuse for his behavior. I just want to let you all know.
Later, Grum comes to Earth himself and assumes human form. He dispatches his general, Banog, who sends Kruger a message about wanting to face him head-on. Kruger tells the full story of his encounter with Banog.
My home of Sirius was invaded by Grum. Sirius had assembled an elite squad of galactic defenders. Space Patrol Delta. The first SPD. We battled for months without sleep. Though our men fought valiantly,
Attack!
we were no match for the endless army of Trubians.
Victory is mine!
While we fought their soldiers, Grum turned his giant robots loose on the defenseless cities. General Banag led those troops against us. Defeated.
Kruger was left as the last of his people and the last of his SPD unit. He vowed never to pick up his sword again after his failure. Grum walks around Earth, his presence killing flowers around him. He wonders why he should even bother with such an unimportant, meaningless planet, but begins his plans anyway. A giant robot drills up under the city and the Rangers are dispatched to fight it. Kat thinks Kruger should be out there with them and says that he left out the most important part of his story. Kruger tells her it's not his place, but Kat gives him a gift. Kruger refuses it and orders her to get out. He later recalls the Rangers as the robot starts putting giant spikes into the ground. The Rangers insist that they could deal with them, but Kruger says they don't know what they're dealing with and will wait until they know more. Boom runs in and says that Kat isn't in the base. She's attacked in the open by Trubian forces and taken prisoner by Banog. The Rangers all stand together and tell Kruger he's out of line after he yells at Boom to do Kat's job, and he tells the rest of the story, that his wife was also taken by Banog and he never saw her again, meaning it's likely she's dead. After the Rangers discover that Grum is on Earth, Boom explains that the spikes are proton spikes, which are harmless by themselves but can't be pulled from the ground without deactivating them first, otherwise they're destructive. In turn, if a mega neutron spike is put in the center of the other spikes, it would create global earthquakes that would annihilate the world. The group gets another message from Banog, telling them that Kat has been taken and Kruger needs to go to designated coordinates or they'll kill her. Kruger sends the Rangers to stop the spikes while he takes up his sword again to save Kat. While the Rangers fight a giant robot, Kruger arrives at the Standard Rock Quarry.
I am here, General Banog. I've come alone as you have asked. I've come to avenge the spirit of my people, the honor of my fallen comrades, my wife.
A huge force of Crybots surround Kruger, and the general says that he'll only fight Kruger if he can defeat 100 Crybots first. And in order to do so, Kruger uses the gift Kat left for him.
SPD emergency! Shadow Ranger!
Okay, immensely cool looking, especially since his number is 100. A nice match is a reminder for his first outing as the Shadow Ranger. But I do have to wonder, what the hell happened to his snout? Is it just pushed up against the helmet?
Yeah! Ha! With this, the truest sword in the galaxy, I will right all wrongs.
In a neat touch, as he charges at the Crybots, a counter appears in the lower right, counting off how many Crybots he has left to defeat. Within 2 minutes, they're all annihilated. Of course, with all things, the inverse ninja law applies, and Banog is a tougher opponent than 100 minions. Banog mocks Kruger for his previous failure and tries to end it with a final laser shot. Kruger charges at Banog, and he deflects his blast over to Kat, freeing her. The Rangers manage to destroy the giant robot, saving the city while Kruger defeats General Banog. However, when Kruger charges him with the kidnapping of his wife, the judgment device registers him as innocent. He's still guilty of all the other stuff, though, and he's imprisoned in the Card. Back on his ship, Grum considers his failure in a nicely schizophrenic manner.
I have underestimated the Power Rangers. I have underestimated Doggy Kruger. I swear it will not happen again. No. That won't be necessary. I can do this. No more mistakes. No more miscalculation. I will be victorious. I fear nothing. Except one.
Shadow is a very good two-parter, but it really is too fast-paced for its own sake. What probably would have helped some setup was if we had gotten some of Kruger's backstory before this point, or a few moments previously where he looked at his sword and just considered it. Then again, by this point, foreshadowing never seems to be something done very often in any Power Ranger series. However, one good thing was that Kruger by this point had been established as a character in his own right, wise, accepting, and very balanced. As such, seeing his behavior in this episode comes off as a genuine change for him, and we understand why. The story itself is structured very well, and definitely one of the best of the season. In the next two-parter, Wired, we get to see other cool aspects of an organization of Rangers. The B Squad is training the 5 members of D Squad, yet another group that could potentially become Rangers later on. There is a hierarchical structure as they tell one cadet that if she continues her impressive work, she'll make C Squad in no time. This does beg the question of why the B Squad Rangers haven't already been promoted to A Squad status, considering the main A Squad is considered MIA, but whatever. In the same episode, they they unveil the Delta Base Defense System. The system allows the Delta Base new weaponry and modes. The building literally becomes a tank, mobile and powerful in its own right. Phase 2 of the system reconfigures the building into the Delta Command Megazord with a full cockpit for all 6 Rangers. I've got to admit, I hate when the Megazord separates the Rangers, so whenever we get to see them together, it's fantastic. At the end of Wired Part 2, as punishment for another failure, Mora is transformed back into an adult whose name is Morgana. Bridge manages to expand his civilian powers to make himself partially telepathic. During the same episode where they reveal this, a glowing orb starts following the Rangers around for a few episodes. Also, Grum distracts the Rangers to steal a material called iridium, which will allow him to merge various metals together to increase their strength. In the following episode, Dismissed, Kruger calls out Grum, wanting to have a direct confrontation with him. We also learn it was Kruger who cut off Grum's other antler. Grum arrives on a motorcycle. Wow, you're the head of an evil empire, and you travel around on a motorcycle like you were friggin' Ghost Rider. Oh, and by the way, this epic battle is basically the Shadow Ranger on an ATV, and Grum on a motorcycle shooting lasers at each other and having Kalash explosions behind them. Or to the sides of them sometimes, which really doesn't make any sense. And then Grum just retreats and it doesn't feel like anything was accomplished. Huh. By the episode Perspective, the Rangers finally see the glowing orb as it saves them from some Crybots. However, the episode itself is an interesting take on a clip show. Instead of showing clips from previous episodes, it shows the same fight scene from each of their points of view, emphasizing how awesome the individual Ranger is in the eyes of the others. While it doesn't really take it to its full potential, it gets dull seeing basically the same thing 6 times in a row. The episode better serves as an example of the team, well, being a team. When the show began, Kruger mentioned how the 3 Rangers were at odds with each other, and while we've seen them be friends with one another, they still get into fights. By this episode, we see that while on an interpersonal level, they still got some ego problems, during actual combat, they work as a team and execute their mission very well. At least at this point. Next up is the 2-parter Messenger. Boom, in his spare time, constructs a radio with the intention of finding old radio broadcasts beamed into space years ago. But instead, he picks up a distress call from the future, the year 2040, and specifically the date July 11th. And the voice on the radio states that it's the 15th anniversary of the Trubian Empire's takeover of Earth.